Hi everyone, Telesky123 here, and today I am going to be doing a review of the Visitation. So then, the Visitation is a 5th Doctor Tegan, Nyssa and Outtakes story from 1982, so it's the first series of Peter Davison's stories. And it's his second to be recorded, actually, despite being the fourth to be transmitted, because they did mix and match a bit during those first 4 episodes, I believe, that were recorded out of order. I think after that did go back into transmission order for the most part, but yeah, instead of it being Castrovalva, Forty Doomsday, Kinder, and then the Visitation, it ended up being Forty Doomsday, the Visitation, Kinder, and then Castrovalva. So this is recorded before he's even recorded his post-regeneration story, so it's interesting to see how that affects his performance in this and after this story, when all stories transfers after that were done after he'd recorded his post-generation story. So yeah, I think it does have some noticeable effects, I will say, in that his Doctor is far from fully developed at this point, and you know, I think recording him out of order does very much so the development out of order, which makes his character seem slightly more all over the place, unfortunately. But after that he does settle in quite a bit. And to be honest, I do have some problems with the 5th Doctor in this story, but we will discuss them a bit later. So then, this is the special edition version you see before you. There is a standard edition that was released ages ago, but to be honest, it's out of print now pretty much, and I think you'd probably be better off getting this version because it's a lot cheaper. Contains all the same special features and more, and has a better designed cover and whatnot. But if you're a completionist, then you might want to go back and get that one. But anyway, this is the only one I've got, so let's take a look at it. You can see the 5th Doctor in the middle there, with Tegan being harassed by an android to the left and a Terileptil to the right. They are the main villains of this story. Flipping it to the side here, you can see standard spine stuff. On the back there you have the Visitation Special Edition by Eric Saywood. This is his first involvement in Doctor Who, and then later became script editor for the rest of Peter Davison's run and all of Colin Baker's run, I believe, except maybe until right at the end, sort of like for that last 2 episodes of Trial of a Time Lord. There were some issues there, some disagreements between himself and John Nathan Turner, but anyway. And then down there you have all the special features, and there are quite a lot actually, and quite a few interesting ones as well. The Television Centre of the Universe Part 1, that was quite interesting. Didn't think we were going to get a Part 2, to be honest, until we came to the Underwater Menace release last year. And then other ones you have as well. You have Doctor Forever, the Apocalypse Element, and no, that doesn't have anything to do with the YouTube channel Doctor Forever, and since I've mentioned him, I will say check him out. He does do some very good reviews. And then also the Apocalypse Element is about, like, I think it was, it is Doctor Who on audio, so that is a Big Finish documentary along with some BBC audio stuff as well that they did. So that's a very interesting one. It's got different pictures in from Colin Baker, Russell T Davies, etc., and their thoughts on how Big Finish has expanded the world of Doctor Who and everything. But enough about the special features for now. Let's open this up and take a look at disc 1 there and disc 2 there, which has sort of like part of the front cover on it and whatnot. You know how it goes. And then if I take the booklet out now, you can see there is the full picture of the Terileptil there. Hasn't got the Doctor in front of it or anything. Then you got the text to the side, And opening it up now, you can see what is on the inside there, all the special features which were listed on the back. And finally, it is a 4-part story. So then the story itself is the Doctor trying to get Tegan back to Heathrow Airport as she wanted to go at this time, and that's sort of like the, I guess if there was an overarching plot for season 19, then it would be that, the Doctor trying to get Tegan back to Heathrow. But obviously he fails and winds up right place, wrong time, and it's about 300 years earlier during the time of the Great Plague, just before the Fire of London, which does tie into the story towards the end. But mostly it is about the Great Plague and whatnot, and you have a certain character who's been affected by it, not affected as in affected by the illness, but affected by what the plague itself has done to the country, in that the theatres are closed down, and he was once a theatreman, now he's turned into a highwayman, and he has to go around robbing people to make a living. So he is quite an interesting character. He is Richard Mace, and he's sort of like almost acts as a 5th companion, really. He's helping the Doctor out and everything, and just has some cracking lines of dialogue. And yeah, you can tell that he doesn't completely understand what's going on, really. But ultimately, he is a very fun character, and I will say just very well written. And as I say, just has some cracking lines of dialogue. I believe he was originally created before this by Eric Saywood for sort of like a radio play, not the same actor, I do believe, but it's like a similar character, I think with the same name of Richard Mace, was made by Eric Saywood for one of those radio plays, and then he carried that character over to here, and it worked wonderfully. It does gel very well with the story, and you know, you can see that while he is sort of there as the comic relief, really, he does also do his bit to help with the story as a whole. Yeah, as I mentioned before, with the 5th Doctor, he did record this before he recorded Castrovalva, his post-generation story, and it does kind of show, really. You can sort of like tell that he's still experimenting with what he wants to do with the role, and does end up being a bit unlikable in this one, I will say. Maybe it's just me, I don't know. Maybe I'm just used to seeing a bit more of a softer side to the 5th Doctor in his later stories. But here he is very prickly, sort of going for that Hartnell route, but it just doesn't really work with this younger man playing it, really. I don't think he gets away with a lot of the lines. There's sort of like one bit where Adric turns up, and then the Doctor's just like, well, it took you long enough, rather than sort of like being impressed by Adric flying the TARDIS and everything. He just sort of like gives him a bit of a and then sees Nyssa and sort of like just glares at her for a second, then moves into the TARDIS as well, and everyone's just like, well, what's wrong with him? And you know, it's just sort of like unexplained, really. And you know, there are a couple of moments like that where I feel the 5th Doctor isn't exactly as likeable as he should be. It's like things that maybe if it were written for some other Doctor, I think it might have been written for the 4th Doctor originally, I think, maybe. Not too sure about that. I know it was definitely in the original draft written for 2 companions and 3 TARDIS crew, and a 4th had to be added in there. I'm not sure it was Tegan or Nyssa. I believe it was Nyssa who was added in at the last minute. But yeah, that kind of shows with Nyssa being consigned to the TARDIS to make the machine that will rattle the android to bits. But you know, she is doing something useful for the story. She is progressing the plot along by doing that. It's not like she's just lying in the TARDIS asleep for 2 episodes. But yeah, you know, I think that it's more the fact that the 5th Doctor's off to me with this one, rather than the fact that the companions aren't written as well in. Speaking of companions, let's start off with Tegan. She is pretty much her normal self in this, so if you like that character, then you'll probably like her in this. If you don't like her, then I doubt you'll like her in this. That's pretty much all I can really say. Tegan is very consistent throughout her time in the TARDIS. You know, Janet Fielding is a great actress, I think, and does that very well. sometimes isn't given the best dialogue to perform, but ultimately I think she does a good job on this. She's a bit more cranky than usual, but that's only really to be expected, I guess, because she wanted to get back to Heathrow and the Doctor has once again failed her. Adric has, of course, that little trip up where he does the whole classic twisting of the ankle thing that companions do. Reverse gender role this time, so it's not a female companion tripping up, it's a male one. So that's quite interesting. I think Adric is interesting that it doesn't follow the tradition of male companions for the Doctor, in that they were usually sort of like the action role almost. You know, Ian was very much the main action hero. You can sort of see that in Stephen Taylor as well. And of course, I almost called him Ian then, but it's not. It's Ian Marter playing Harry Sullivan. He is great as well. But then when you get to Adric, he's very different from that classic role that you get. And it's sort of like that boy genius, and boy genius roles are often, when they're extremely arrogant, aren't like that much. And I feel that this is sort of one of those stories where he is being a bit pedantic, and you know, it's just, I like Adric for the most part in this story. However, I can very much see why some people would have a problem with him. And then of course we come to the previously mentioned Nyssa, who is just wonderful really. Sarah Sutton can never really fail in that role. I think she gives a very good performance. I think the character is very interesting. The TV series doesn't exactly explore the character as much as it should do. Rather, it prefers to lock her in the TARDIS for 2 episodes in a state of deep sleep. But in this story, she does have a fair share of good things to do, and you can sort of like tell that she's the Doctor's favourite companion in some ways, in that when they're all at the front door, they're sort of like front door of the house during part 1, I think it was. They're talking about breaking in and looking for a window around the side, and they're like, oh, let's all go look, and then the Doctor's like, no, just Nyssa. And yeah, is it favouritism? I don't know. Did he just pick her because she's the least likely to make a noise while breaking in? We may never know the answer to that, but yeah, I say Sarah Sutton does have some good lines here, such as sort of like where the Doctor's talking about visiting Miller, and then she's like, Doctor, you can't steal a poor man's horse. And little bits like that really do work very well with her character. So the villains of the piece, you have the android, and yes, it does look very 80s in its design, but you know, for the most part, because it's on videotape, it does dull it down quite a bit, and you know, there are some interesting effects there. And I think the opening sequence actually is rather nice, where it's storming the house and everything, and you know, you sort of like get to see these people's normal lives playing out just before they go to bed, and then suddenly Terileptils and Android breaks in to their house and kills them all really, and it's quite a well done sequence, we'll say. And the android itself is a nice design, and you know, it's quite, it doesn't really have much of a character to it. It's interesting seeing it dressed up as Death or the Grim Reaper, sort of like to play on that time period and everything, and that people would be afraid of it. And basically the mask, when it is in that form, does look a bit ridiculous. You know, you sort of like wonder why people didn't think, oh, isn't that just a man in the mask? Even though it is an android, but you know, it works, I guess, as the vision image of death. You can sort of like tell that superstitious people probably would be fooled by that at that time. But overall, the android serves its purpose. It's very much there as a foot soldier, because it is very much bulletproof, whereas the Terileptils are not. And an alien that the Brigadier would probably quite like, one that isn't immune to bullets, and you know, they are quite an interesting race really. I think they are given a very good backstory here. They are sort of brought up again once more in The Awakening. You sort of like do get a mention of them, but other than that, it's only really this story, and it's interesting for a civilization sort of like that was set up quite a lot in this, given quite a lot of backstory here, but not in an expositional way. It is, you sort of get a scene like that in part 3, I believe it was, but at the same time it doesn't feel like it's just 5 minutes of info dump. It is very quick, very well done, and it sets up this interesting culture in that they sort of like they have a concept of beauty but are nevertheless fascinated by war, and I think that's quite interesting. Also, these are obviously prisoners as well, and they get sent to the mines of Raga, where the gases there can have corrosive effect. As you can see on the male leader of the what's he called, of the Terileptils, he has that scarring on his face, and it's a surprise really that Big Finish or the new series hasn't really done anything more with the Terileptils since their appearance here. And they do have that wonderful animatronic thing. Yeah, it's a bit dated now, but for the time, when you compare it to what else is in there, when you compare it to the paper mache sort of snake of the Mara that you see in the last episode, I'd say this one is a rather good design and very interesting. Well, was it necessary really? Was it necessary to spend all that money on that sort of prosthetics? Well, I'm not sure if it's prosthetic exactly, but sort of all that animatronics and whatnot that's in there. I don't know. It works fairly well, and I think it is fascinating for the time. And obviously, for technology to progress, you do have to go through these phases and everything to get to the point that we are at now with animatronics. And overall, I will say the Terileptils are a very good villain in this, and it's a shame that they haven't been used since. Overall, the story is viewed as a bit of a classic by some people. A lot of people look back on it with nostalgia and whatnot if you're from the 80s. But me, however, I don't know, I don't view it as a classic. I'm much more fond of things like Kinder. I feel like this is very much playing it safe for the most part. And it doesn't really do enough with the time period, I think, with sort of the citizens and everything. Maybe it's because there's too many companions here. Maybe that's sort of dragging the story down so that you can't really have many supporting characters. But it is very much only Richard Mace who serves as a supporting character. And for the most part, I think maybe we should have spent a bit more time in this London at the end or something, or maybe the whole story could have been set in London, but I don't know, maybe that would have been a bit too expensive for them. It is nice to have the action out in the countryside and everything in this village, but we don't really get to see much of that. We don't really get to see much of the life, which is sort of come to expect from a historical, though it is a pseudo-historical, so you do have all these alien elements thrown in there and everything. I don't know, maybe I've been a bit treated when it comes to these stories set in the past, that this one just doesn't work as well for me. I do get quite a bit of enjoyment out of it for the most part. The Fifth Doctor does irritate me in this one, and sometimes Tegan can too. So ultimately, pacing's alright, I'd say, for this one. It's just some certain other moments. Maybe it just doesn't all gel together as well as I think it should. But, it's hard to say whether this one's worthy of a 7 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10. I think I've been too nice lately. Let's give this one a 6 out of 10. Let's be mean for once. Let's push boundaries. Yeah. So yeah, 6 out of 10 is my rating for this one. Still a good rating, I'd say, but not a great rating. Would I recommend picking this one up? Not if it's one of your first Davisons. I say there are better Fifth Doctor ones out there to get beforehand. Caves of Androzani, Snake Dance, the aforementioned Kinder, even Fall to Doomsday I enjoy more, but maybe that's just me. It is a very flawed story, but I enjoy it. But yeah, this isn't a review of Fall to Doomsday anyway. It's a solid story, but one that I'd say could be a lot better. And Eric Saywood would go on to do better, obviously, because in 2 stories' time he would write the Cyberman classic Earthshock, and I think he's written quite a few other ones as well that are quite well thought of, but I can't think of any at this time. Revelations of Daleks, actually, that depends on your point of view. That's quite a controversial one. I know people who love it, I know people who hate it. But yeah, as a start for Eric Saywood, I'd say this is definitely one that shows promise in him as a writer. Whether or not he lived up to that is down to your opinion. So then, all that's left to say now is thank you for watching, everyone. Next review will be of The Diary of River Song Series 1, so look forward to that. And I will see you all then. Bye, everyone.
Have you seen the sky? It's beautiful.
Strange lights in the sky never bode well for the future.
Is that supposed to be Heathrow?
Well, actually, they haven't built the airport yet. We're about 300 years early.
You must be new to the world, sir. Have not you heard? There is plague.
Where?
Everywhere.
You'd better prepare yourself for a shock.
What now?
I don't think you'll have seen anything quite like a Terileptil before.
Horrible, horrible, it was horrible.
Time to rid this planet of all its primitives.
Genocide.
Our rats will ensure that there are no survivors.
But you'd need thousands of them.
I have thousands of them.
There's evil at work here.
Their infection will kill every living